It is America's #1 cable morning news show, and you are watching it right now. Welcome aboard the 7 o'clock hour of Fox and Friends. Ainsley's in England, and Abby's in her place.
Yeah, she's learning how to drink tea the proper way.
Right.
She's going to give me all her tips when she gets home.
And we'll find out once and for all if she likes warm beer, because that's how they don't really refrigerate things over there.
Kind of started refrigerating.
More on that later.
Just keep it the natural way.
Has England discovered Freon? We're going to discuss that next hour.
Good morning to all of you, though. Thanks for joining us this
Mayor
morning.
Rudy Giuliani's been scrambled early, changed outfits right after Laura Ingram's show to help us out through the legal tanglements, which are the Mueller investigation. Thanks so much for joining us on a quick turnaround, Mr. Mayor.
Nice to be with you always.
All right, first off, on some of the things you revealed last night, when you were sitting down with Robert Mueller and others, he made it clear to you, there was Robert Mueller when he said, we don't believe we can indict a sitting president. Was he trying to get your guard down as if, what are you afraid of, guys? Just bring him in.
No, I don't think so. It came up this way. I asked him specifically if they realized or acknowledged they didn't have the power to indict, both under the Justice Department memo, which gives them their power, in essence, confines their power, and under the Constitution. And he said, well, he wouldn't answer. And one of his assistants said they acknowledged they had to be bound by Justice Department policies. And then the next day or the day after, they clarified it for Jay Sekulow, who was with me at the meeting, that they didn't have the power to indict, that what they would eventually do is write a memorandum and give it to the Deputy Attorney General, Rosenstein. And we never got to the issue of subpoena. I think he had raised that earlier with John Dowd, but it didn't come up with me. But we're pretty comfortable that in the circumstances of this case, they wouldn't be able to subpoena him personally.
Really?
Well, there's no Supreme Court decision that really is right on point. There are several decisions around it. For example, they could probably require documents to be produced. That's what was required of Nixon. And we've produced 1.4 million documents. They could probably require you to testify in a civil case, possibly even as a witness in a criminal case. But they can't require you to testify in what would be your own case, because after all, it's all about a possible impeachment. Impeachment has to come before indictment. And that's a law not just in the United States. That's the law that governs for most heads of state in the world.
So essentially, your team is saying, hey, Mr. Mueller, you cannot subpoena him to get him to come and talk to you, because that would violate Article 2 of the Constitution and executive privilege. So it's a no, right?
Well, also, it would violate the Justice Department policies, and he is specifically appointed under those policies. So he has to follow those. So we could go to court and challenge anything that he did that was violative of those policies. Okay. Look, he's being challenged by Manafort, looks like successfully, to produce his authorization to indict Manafort. That's not clear that he has it. So I don't think he wants a battle with us over that. Yeah. And there is a narrow set of circumstances. You got to understand the president wants to testify. He wants to give his side of the case, which he believes is the truthful one. He keeps saying to me, I never talked to any Russians. I had nothing to do with any Russians. What is this nonsense about Russians? And about obstruction of justice, what he says very simply is, I'm just expressing my opinion. I can't say that Comey is doing a bad job. I'm obstructing justice if I decide that the director of the FBI is doing a bad job. That's ridiculous. So he wants to express that. Now, on Mueller's side, everything he says, they believe they can examine his motives. So if they had an open mind, we would be inclined maybe to let our client do what he wants to do.
Yeah, what do you think happens to James Comey? You've been critical of him about leaking his memos. You say he needs to be personally investigated. Where do you think that goes?
Well, I don't know how you can fire FBI agents for leaking less sensitive things and not fire him for leaking a memo that he has variously classified as an FBI document, his own personal document. First of all, nothing is his personal document when he's director of the FBI and he's sitting down and trying to memorialize a meeting with the President of the United States. Give me a break, Comey. I mean, even you can't stretch the truth that far. You go pretty far, but you can't stretch it that far. So, I mean, I think the investigation should be thrown out because it all began with an illegal act. Comey's leaking of the memo to the professor, who the House now wants to find out all the circumstances of that. That's going to be a pretty slimy situation. I'd like to know how often Comey leaked in other circumstances, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just think if he's so comfortable doing it and so easily he said it, and then we find out the guy had special FBI clearance. Mr. Mayor, we had Judge Napolitano here, and you guys go way back to old Italy and your rivalries with your families. I'm only kidding. But he came out and says, listen, I love Rudy, but he's making a mistake poking the bear by telling Mueller to wrap it up. You don't want to grab the tiger. You don't want to aggravate him because they make your life miserable. Have you examined your tactics and thought about maybe the backlash?
Somebody has to defend the president, and that's my job. And if he wants to get angry at me, not the president. I'm the one doing it. And the reality is that's my job. My job is not to, lean over and let him beat the hell out of us. That's what was going on before I got here. It's my job to make the case for the president of the United States. I'm very proud of that. And I think it's very different now than it was a couple weeks ago. Since I got involved in the Raskins and Jay, we're one team now. We're doing what the president wants, and we're fighting back. And, look, they're professionals. And if they're not, there's a remedy can be in court. I mean, all they can do is write a report.
Right.
So how bad that is,
sure.
we can deal with that. We can write, too.
Can you see any scenario, Mayor, where the president would sit down with Mueller?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I think, it depends on if they're willing to be reasonable. Look, we've written them 5 letters. 3 when John Dowd was in charge, 2 since I came aboard, asking for things that we would need in order to decide whether to submit him to questioning, which every lawyer in America, I think even Judge Napolitano would tell you he shouldn't do.
Sure.
I mean, we're going to be the laughingstock of lawyers if we let him testify.
Gotcha.
But you can be sure we're only going to do that if we feel there's a way to shorten this thing. If we're in for a long investigation, we'll fight every single thing, whether people think it's nice or not nice. Or if you're innocent, you got to fight back. And the president is completely innocent, and he is absolutely right. And if you want to get insulted, you can get insulted, but it's a damn witch hunt.
Well, I tell you what, the Mueller investigation officially started a year ago, and today the New York Times got a great big article about the operation that led to it. It was called Operation Crossfire Hurricane, and it sounds like the New York Times is confirming that the FBI essentially spied on the Trump campaign in the summer before the election, which would suggest they were out to frame him.
In fact, here's the exact quote. At least one government informant met several times with Page and Papadopoulos. Current and former officials said that has become a politically contentious point with Trump's allies questioning whether the FBI was spying on the Trump campaign or not. This was buried in a 4,000-page story. But what I just read to you, what is your stand on that? What is that? Does that change anything?
Well, it would change a lot of things. I mean, first of all, we're going to have to look into as a result of the Times article. And thank you, New York Times. They usually don't help us. In this case, I think we're going to have to look into whether we can challenge the legitimacy of the entire investigation. Maybe a special prosecutor, special counsel never should have been appointed. Not based on an illegal leak, not based on a set of facts that go back to, I'm shocked to hear that they put a spy in the campaign of a major party candidate, or maybe 2 spies. And now I'm going through my brain, since you know I was a big part of that campaign. I'm trying to figure out who was the spy.
Right.
Now I'm wondering, is it this person or that person or this person?
Yeah.
Now, if there's a spy, they got nothing from it. Look, they'd be able to bring their case right now if the spy had any incriminating information. That spy should have been enough to tell them that these people were not talking to the Russians. Rudy? There was no collusion with the Russians.
Well, don't you need enough evidence to put a spy on someone, to subpoena someone? I mean, there are still a lot of questions as to the evidence that ultimately led to this investigation.
Well, this is kind of like the Big Bang Theory, right, Abby? I mean, obviously they didn't have enough evidence to put a spy in. I mean, you don't need enough evidence to put a spy in. To put one in on the President of the United States, it would seem to me you darn well better have it. They didn't have it because they don't have it now. Yeah. But they wouldn't be. Look, if they had a spy, if the spy got incriminating evidence, they'd be able to wrap this investigation up. I wouldn't be sitting here. We'd be dealing with whatever the aftermath of the investigation is.
So all we know is they may have had somebody inside close to the campaign, but so far...
That would be the biggest scandal in the history of this town, at least involving law enforcement. And there's no one that has more respect for the FBI agents, the men and women of the FBI, than I do. And I mean, Comey has put them through hell. If he put them through this as well, really to clear the name of the FBI, he should be prosecuted. And his friend McCabe, who one of them is lying. I mean, they're now going at each other. One of them is lying. I mean, you can toss a coin to figure out which one.
Well, let's see.
And the president shouldn't have fired him?
Well, I know. Well, let's see if any of this is addressed in the Inspector General's report, which should be out very shortly. Rudy,
we're looking forward to that, guys. I'll see you back in New York.
All right.
Mayor, good to see you this morning. Have a good day.
All right.
All right, let's go over to
Very nice
Jillian.
to get up early for us.
Yeah, he was on late last night, too.
Yeah.
Jillian,
Yes.
for some other headlines. A lot going on this morning.
That's right. We are following a lot of stories, starting with this. President Trump meeting with politicians opposed to California's sanctuary laws. The commander-in-chief praising the leaders for fighting against it.
We cannot let this butchering